When Azerbaijan's delegation arrived in Geneva, Switzerland last week for the United Nations' latest review of the country's implementation of its commitments under the Convention Against Torture, they were not alone. Representatives of the Center for Truth and Justice, a US-based nonprofit that gathers first-hand testimonial evidence of alleged war crimes committed in the conflicts between Armenia and Azerbaijan, made sure they were in the room as well. Azerbaijan is one of the more than 150 countries that have signed on to the Convention Against Torture, making it one of the most widely ratified international human rights treaties. That means the Committee Against Torture, a UN treaty body, can monitor Azerbaijan's compliance in what are called periodic reviews. That's where CFTJ came in. Misha Guragyan Hall, a CFTJ volunteer, explains how this process works.
The committee asks NGOs, civil society organizations, anyone who may have information relevant to this particular state's compliance with this convention, in this case the Convention Against Torture, to submit written observations. And that's what the Center for Truth and Justice has done.
In the run-up to the hearings, CFTJ sat down with nearly 36 former Armenian soldiers, all of whom had been held captive in Azerbaijan as prisoners of war and were subsequently repatriated back home. And as CFTJ co-founder and California lawyer Tamara Voskanyan tells it, what they found was stark.
100% of them, based on our separate interviews with each of them, concluded, patterns of systematic torture by guards, by members of the Azerbaijani state and officials, physical torture, desecration of religious symbols such as crosses, humiliation, forced confessions was a large part of what the inmates were subjected to, torture to get confessions. So we're raising issues like that this week, and Azerbaijan is being required to answer those concerns.
With the hearings now wrapped up, the UN committee is working on what are called its concluding observations, written comments on the issues at hand that can then be cited in international legal proceedings and even legislation. CFTJ hopes the committee will include concerns about the treatment of the dozens of Armenians who remain in custody in Azerbaijan in their observations. The observations are set to come out next month. Aside from that, lawyers with CFTJ have also filed a number of complaints to the UN committee on behalf of individual torture victims. Affirmative findings in those complaints can also be brought as evidence in international courts.
So 10 of those have been filed already, and we have the same number in the pipeline. So by the time we finish filing, it will be about 20 individual complaints. And the goal with those complaints would be that there would be a conclusive finding that a violation occurred, so that it is clear that Azerbaijan is not complying with its obligations under the Convention Against Torture.
For Philippe La Rochelle, a lawyer who is working alongside CFTJ and previously worked on major human rights cases in Rwanda, Lebanon, and Canada, the large number of issues involving Azerbaijan now unfolding in major international bodies is highly unusual.
It's crazy. Look at Azerbaijan is unique in the number of cases it has against it. There's this happening before the Committee Against Torture. There are cases before the International Court of Justice. There are cases and there's a communication before the International Criminal Court. There has been very strong comment in the last review of the Committee Against Racial Discrimination. So Azerbaijan seems to be at the crossroad of violations of various international conventions, and this is quite unique. You don't see that many countries who get such negative reviews before so many forums, and this is what makes the situation of Azerbaijan so unique.
Still, it is important to understand that many of those institutions have limited enforcement powers. La Rochelle acknowledges that, but insists that growing pressure by bodies like the Committee Against Torture can affect change.
Azerbaijan will receive more and more pressure to respect those conventions. To respect, it's the basic notion of human dignity and human life that they are called upon to respect. And there's a cost associated with becoming a pariah in the international community. And the hope is that the accumulation of strong language, and this is why we're here. We want to add to that pressure. We want to add to that building momentum against Azerbaijan and making sure that they comply with these provisions, that they respect everyone, not only our people of Armenian ethnic origin, but everybody in their country.